going to put the passenger side on first because that's going to be the easiest. Then I'll put the driver's side on because that one is going to require a little bit of fiddling around because I'm going to have to cut the wheel well, I think, to be able to accommodate the rod for the steering. So away we go. Got this one side sort of mocked up. There's a few little things that I need to change. Had to do a bit of modification in there. A lot of struggles going on to get this one on because I'm a one-man show. And to show everybody that, you know what, you do make some mistakes sometimes when you're not paying attention. Broke the Schrader valve off our fuel rail because I'm an idiot and I leaned on this when I was trying to get into the engine compartment here. So that's gonna cost us a couple bucks to replace that, but I guess those things happen. Next up, see how the fitment goes on this. A lot of stuff has changed on this side with the addition of the brake booster with the steering stuff. Gonna have to cross our fingers and hope everything goes well. And then there were two. So now what I want to do is I'm going to get the bottom sill plate or whatever it's called mounted on here just loosely, and I'm going to get the grill on because what I need to do is start figuring out how I'm going to put the RAD in. It's not looking like there's a lot of room at all. Got the grill on, only held on with 2 bolts for the moment, but really that's all we need. So here is the plan. Ages ago, I picked up one of these RADs off of an online shop that we all know very well. So I'm gonna pop it out. I believe it's a 3-core, plus it's got the fans and all that sort of stuff that go with it. Oh, not as big as I thought. Here we go. Hope it's not too long. Looks like she might just fit, indeed. So we've got the exact issue I thought we were gonna have, which isn't a big deal. It's these mounts here that used to have the HVAC, if that's what you want to call it, in there, and they are in the way. I'm not sure about the bottoms. I'm gonna have to just do some measuring and stuff like that and see how things fit up, but basically what's gonna have to happen is I'm gonna have to zip these guys off, at least down to the bottom there on either side, and then I'll be able to manipulate things a little bit better and get that in, because what's happening now is that this mount for the hood latch is in the way. So this is going to be a bit of an adventure. Now I measured out the width from here to here, looking at 40 inches. The RAD itself is 32. So I'm just gonna start by chopping out some sections here and to see how I'm gonna get things to line up. Obviously I'm gonna have to probably come down lower on each side, I would think, because I'm pretty sure the RAD is the height of this. I don't want to go much lower than this part though, because that's actually where the bottom valance attaches. If I have to cut it, I have to cut it, but we'll also have to cut the valance too when it goes back on, so it won't be held on with as many bolts. But I mean, those are the things that you run into when you're building something like this. It is an aluminum RAD, obviously, so I'm thinking that I may end up bringing it up to a buddy to just TIG weld some mounting tabs or something like that on it or I might try to figure out some bracketry across the top. I haven't kind of gotten to that point yet. I just want to see how it'll fit. That was interesting. Lots of chopping, lots of cutting, maybe a little bit of measuring. It's just starting to fit, and I'm fine with that. I don't want to go too crazy. I think we're going to have to just keep cutting back a little bit. The one issue that I'm running into, though, is that it looks as though the one side of the RAD is going to sit on these hoses, and I don't want that. If they turned up a little bit more, that would be great. The reason that they don't is because that the return line still has the metal piece on it, and that was just kind of the natural flow as far as how it went. Overall, though, I'm happy. I wasn't really sure which direction I was going in when I started this morning. The biggest thing is going to be figuring out how I'm going to brace this. That's what I'm the most concerned about, but I'm sure I'll figure something out. That's it for me today, but I will be back in a... So what I ended up doing was going back and cutting this structure all out. The more I messed around with it, the more sense it made to just get rid of it. I was working against myself. So I've cleaned up in here, and I'm just trying to figure out how I want to mount things. There's a couple of different options, but I'm thinking right now is I'm going to come up with an L bracket of some sort that comes across here, and that's what the RAD's going to sit on. It sits in really nice. Lots of space. This, of course, looks terrible, but we'll get that all fixed up. So I'm going to start working on my L bracket now. Bracket is made. Everything is cut up all nicely. Made some tabs on there. And then this guy is just going to slide in here. Now, what I want to do is make sure everything is level before I start drilling anything out. And then I'll be able to attach it, and we'll be able to start making all the other fun stuff. Very close to being level, just thumb tightened in there for now. But we've got some good clearance here. We'll have some good clearance here. Get this guy tightened up, put the RAD in, and see how it sits. There's definitely gonna have to be some modifications done. You can see it's actually not sitting on the bar. It's sitting, unfortunately, still on a bit of the frame, and I think it looks like a bit of the steering gearbox too. But I have a solution to that problem. Got these C channels here. That had always been the intent, was to have it cradled. Now, the other problem that I'm going to run into is the fact that I think that it's going to sit a little bit too high once I get those cradles in. So we might have to do some hood modifications, or I might have to lean the RAD back. Got it mocked up. Got a slight angle to it. One of the things that's nice, might be hard to see, is that we're missing everything back here. Nothing's going to run into the engine, but it is close. Strangely enough, and this is probably due to my rather amateur fabrication skills, we were having an issue rubbing on the frame on the inside here. This corner right here, the only option was to raise it up more, and I didn't want to do that because we're already playing with very little space over here. So now I ended up putting a spacer in, probably hard to see, but we just missed the frame by a little bit, and that's all that we need to miss it by. My next step is to make the brace for the top, and then we have a RAD attached into the car. So yesterday I shot some video and did some work and went home very unhappy. I don't know what it was, if I rushed through things or I didn't think things through or whatnot, so I'm going to start over today. I managed to take a few moments last night, take it easy, think things through, and hopefully I've come up with a way better solution. So what I'm going to do now is undo what I did yesterday, and then I'm going to start over and document the process all over again. So here's one of the problems with yesterday's metal. I had used this C channel, grounded down on the one side so it fit the bottom of the RAD properly, but as you can see, it has an angle to it. and it wasn't tight and it wasn't sitting in nicely. But what I did now is I ended up getting some angle bracket, and it has a much straighter edge to it, so the RAD is going to sit down a lot nicer. So what I've done is I've just mocked it up here, threw a little piece of metal in as a spacer. I'll tack it together, then I'm going to cut it in half so we can go on either side, and then we will mount it back up to the mount that I made yesterday. So that's what I've ended up with, and I'm going to go right on there like that. It's stepped just a little bit on this side because of the mounting part for the fan. So now what I've just got to do is figure out spacing on the main bracket itself, and then I'll get these guys welded in and can start working on the other bracketry to get it stiffened up and in place. Finally in, took a lot of messing around. It is now completely level. Still gonna have an issue with this cap, I think. Move things around and chop up some of the underbelly of the hood. And it completely misses under here. Got a little bit of clearance there. It's been hours working on this. Almost gave up once, but I had to persevere because I know that this has to go in. Please pay no attention to the current state of things, but I wanted to show this before I started welding anything up. For some reason, when I put this in, it is completely level. I made sure of that when I actually set up the tabs and all that sort of stuff. But I've got to space it up by a little bit on the driver's side to make things level. I have no idea why. I have tried all sorts of different options. I've worked on this for about 3 or 4 hours this morning after ripping apart what I did yesterday, but I'm glad that it finally works because there is a lot more left to do. So now I'll get this welded in and I'll get things cleaned up and hopefully it'll look nicer. Please bear in mind that I am not a professional welder by any means whatsoever, which probably is obvious sometimes, but I do my best. So the next issue that I'm faced with now that the nightmare of the lower mount for the RAD is done is actually figuring out how I'm going to keep things in place across the top. The issue that I'm having is this RAD didn't come with any tabs whatsoever. And because I don't know how to TIG weld or aluminum weld, I'm not going to put any tabs on. It would have made life way easier. I guess if I really run into an issue, I can go and see somebody who does it. But what I'm going to try to do is make some sort of bracketry. I thought about running it across the back, but the problem across the back is there's really not anywhere for me to put anything where I can like run a bar or anything like that across. One issue that I am considering is I've got this L bracket here. I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna cut a little hole in there so I can mount into my bracket that I just made. Oh! Then what I'll do is I'll run some square tubing across to the other side. I will probably bolt on the bottom, weld on the top just so it does come apart a little bit easier, and hopefully that will be sturdy enough. Got my angle iron on both sides now, really straightforward. Went way faster than the last little bit went, that's for sure. Got a couple issues here. This tends to be bent out a little bit more than this one. I'm not sure why. There could be a weird angle on the frame, could be a weird angle on the bracket that I made on the bottom. Not a big deal. I intentionally left these high so that I can mark them off and then cut them where they need to be. Then run a bracket between there, make my hole down. Now, saying that, we're really starting to play with fire as far as where the hood is coming down here, because this is actually where the latch is. I'll go over and show again. Like, we've got tons and tons and tons of room. It's very high and it comes straight down. So that's not a big issue. It's more of the structure that's in there. Tim seems to think that basically we could probably just cut all of this off and then replace it with a bar higher up. So we might try that. I know I won't cut anything below this. Got my crosser on, just tacked in, got the bars cut down. Now I'm just gonna take it apart and I can start making some modifications. Okay, so I am back. It's been a bit of a stretch since I was here last, 2 weeks in total. In video world, it's only a blink of an eye though. So what I want to do now is get back to working on this RAD support. What I need to do, finish trimming this down for our airflow. Plus what I ended up grabbing was some insulating rubber so it can sit against the RAD, a little bit of double-sided tape to hold that on, and then various bolts, nuts, and washers to get everything else attached. Hopefully, it gets finished today. So I've got it back in. It is loose-ish here. The next thing that I've got to do is get the brackets to hold it in place. Plus, I want to put some insulating tape and whatnot along the edges here to get things lined up properly. So plans changed a little bit. I ended up doing a step earlier than I thought I would, which worked out for the best anyway. So one of the issues we were having was all of the fender and wheel well in here had all been sliced up when I was cutting pieces out to accommodate the new RAD. Also, it was a bit messy down here too. Please ignore the welds. I am not a welder. I just tacked this together the best I could. I will do some cleanup on it later, but what it does is it gives us a little bit more structure in terms of how everything is going to mount up, because I am going to have to make a bracket of some sort to attach to the fender wells to keep the RAD from moving back and forth. So I figured, why not do this now? So the other day I was down and fiddling around with brackets to hold the front of the RAD mount from moving side to side. So I threw together just a quick little junk bracket. Basically what's gonna happen is this guy's gonna sit in here and it's gonna sit against the side of the wheel well there and should hold everything in place. Now, the problem that you can see with this one is it is a bit slanty shanty, just because I made it out of scraps. So what I did was ran out and got some metal from my buddy Greg, and I'm going to remake this, and then I'm going to not remake because I haven't done it yet. I'm going to make one for the other side to do the same, and then I can pull this whole thing apart, get my welds all finished up, and put this thing to bed. So we started off with that guy there, and we ended up with this guy here. I think it's relatively level. I tried it with my level. It might not look too level on camera, but eyeballing it here, it's not too bad. So now it's just onto this side, which is going to be a little bit more challenging, only because there's a little bit more length that I have to deal with. But overall, same design. Pretty much done. All measured out, the RAD fits in fine. What I'm gonna do now is I'm going to pull it apart and weld it up, and then I'll put the RAD in so that everyone can see what it looks like. And that is a wrap. This is all done. Of course, it's not perfect. I did run into a couple of issues after I had everything assembled. When I changed the bracket from the one that I had made before and redid it, I went with a thicker metal, and I didn't take that into account to my measurements. I just measured it off the desk. I didn't put this back in to measure it again. So I ended up having to just cut some stuff off while it was on the car and re-weld. Now, am I happy with that? Yeah, it's pretty good. It turned out okay. It's a little sloppier than I would have liked, but it would have been a huge pain to disassemble it all, start cutting and moving, when I could just do it right here. It's not like it was the whole thing that had to be changed. I did notice that I am running into a bit of an issue right here. It is pressing against the bracket. I don't think that that's a big deal, especially once I get some insulators and stuff like that on. That will push this out a little bit more. We're loose here, so there is room for sure. But otherwise, that's it. Hands down, this has been the biggest challenge of this entire project. I had no idea how I was going to do it when I first started it. Keeping in mind that I've got a square body frame, a Bel Air body, and some aftermarket RAD that I bought online. There was a lot of trial and error, a lot of frustration, a lot of building, then ripping apart and doing it again. There was a few times I almost gave up too, but I had to keep reminding myself it's a learning experience, and if it doesn't turn out absolutely as perfect as you want to, you got to try your best and do the best that you can. And I'm happy with how it turned out, and I think it's going to work perfectly fine. So now I've just got to do a few little things that I won't bother showing on camera, and then I can move on to the next step. And that next step could be even more challenging than this one. So make sure to tune in and find out what that is. In the meantime, thanks for watching, folks, and have a good one.